Hi, I'm Crystal Hall Shivers, the proud president of the North Broward County Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and I'd like to welcome you to Connect and Elect.
Hi, I am Joel McCrae, President of Chi Psi Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for tuning in to Connect and Elect.
Hi, I'm Kara Bailey, President of the Kappa Kappa Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for tuning in to Connect and Elect.
Hi,
I'm unmuted. Okay, hi. My name is Dion Trewick, and I'm with the Alpha Kappa Alpha chapter of, I'm with Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority of Chi Psi Omega, the Coral Springs chapter. And I want to talk to you about our first speaker. I first met our first speaker in Tallahassee when we both walked the halls at the state legislature together, advocating for common causes. I didn't know anything about her very much, but I knew that she was just so cool and I needed to find out more about her. And let me tell you what I learned about this fierce and impressive woman. She is a civil rights lawyer in Panama City who, along with her husband, fight to protect the rights of those wronged at work due to their race, religion, age, and disability, place of birth, and unwanted sexual advances. I also learned that she graduated from Harvard University in 1981 with a degree in visual and environmental studies. Now, after she graduated from Harvard University, she went to law school at the University of Virginia, where she graduated in 1984. Then she spent 5 years as an active duty Air Force JAG officer prosecuting in military courts. She then retired in 2005 as a major. A few months ago, I bumped into her again at a Zoom conference of all places. And I saw her and found that she was actually the president of the Bay County League of Women Voters, and that she was the first vice president of the League of Women Voters of Florida. And in that capacity, she also serves as the chair of the state league efforts on restoration of rights for healthcare. So not only is Cecile a fierce social warrior, she's also the mother of three and is a member of the Xi Omicron Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Please welcome Cecile Schoon to Connect and Elect.
Thank you, Sarah Diane. That was beautiful. And I remember meeting you also and hearing you speak before the representatives, and you were very passionate. And that's just what our sorority needs.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be here and I'll be chatting with you and hopefully answering any questions that you may have. Well, first thing I want to share with you is today is National Voter Registration Day, September 22nd. And it's one of our challenges for us to register as many voters as possible. And that's something that the League of Women Voters and our great sorority have in common. Everybody's voice must be heard. Everybody must be at the table so that they can advocate for their needs and their families' needs. And so this is an opportunity for people to sit down and basically think about, in civic engagement, registering someone to vote is really first base. That's when you get to first base. And we actually have some beautiful logos in pink and green that encompass this concept of the National Voter Registration Day. And they ask us to do events pretty much all week long and take pictures of our activities and submit that to our connections team so that they can publicize that. So let's celebrate National Voter Registration Day. We're doing that by working on voter registration today. And we can also do that when we finish with our Zoom by emailing our friends with youthful, potentially voting family members who may not have thought to register to vote. The deadline in Florida is October the 5th. You can register in different ways. And I know we have some slides that'll go into it a little bit further, but we actually have registration online in Florida now. Thank you. The different ways that we can register in Florida to vote: you can register online, you can register on paper, and you can print it out and register, fill it out and drop it to the supervisor of elections office or their secured ballot box, or you can mail it. Now, when you mail your voter registration, we really feel like that would be better for you to drop it in person because of the concerns about the mail. So that's first base, is doing the voter registration. Second base is being prepared to vote. And part of being prepared to vote is thinking about your options. You have 3 ways of voting now. The first one is vote by mail. You can vote by mail by calling your supervisor of elections office or emailing them and asking them for a vote by mail ballot that they will send to your home. Now, when you get that vote by mail ballot, there are a lot of instructions on the envelope and inside. And it's really important that you follow all of the instructions so that your ballot will be counted. We've had situations where people sometimes don't sign the outside envelope, which you must sign the outside envelope for it to be counted. So those are some of the things that you've got to do. You also have a choice to vote early. Early voting in the state of Florida, for you down south, it starts October 19th through November 1st. And the different supervisors of elections are given an opportunity within a window of time to pick other times. So up here in North Florida, we have different dates. So you need to check on the website of your supervisor of election to see what they have set forth. Election day is the same for all of us. That is Tuesday, November 3rd. You can go in person. We're really asking people to consider to vote by mail for safety's sake and to, stay away from crowds and to vote early. I want to say also something that people don't know about vote by mail. You can actually check after you do drop it in to the secure box or turn it in supervisor of elections, or if you mail it in early with plenty of time, more than 2 weeks, you can check to make sure your ballot was received and it was properly counted. You can actually check your name, your date of birth, and you'll see that your ballot, if there's a problem. If there's a problem with vote by mail, your supervisor of election is required to notify you and give you a chance to cure it, which means that you would either come and do another one or sign an affidavit saying, this is my signature, it has changed, or whatever was the defect that they found. But you can track it by going online and looking at your name also. They're supposed to mail you something by postal and by email if you've given them your email. So there you can see that you can request your ballot, and there's the site right there, www.browardsoe.org, and there's a phone number, 954-357-7050. There's a reminder that yes, you must sign the vote by mail ballot, and your signature needs to match your signature that you used when you registered to vote. If your signature has changed drastically, the recommendation is that you actually register to vote again. And on the form, it says updating signature. So even though you're not updating your address or anything like that, you can update your signature just with that. That's the way you would do it. And what we tell people now as a tip, actually take a picture of your signature if you're registering to vote recently, so that you'll just have it right there in your phone. And when it's time to do your vote by mail, you just make it look the same. And usually, that's not a problem for us. But some of us, as we're aging, our hand or grip may change. And if people registered to vote when they were very young, their signature may have changed. There's several ways to figure out this. Yes, so that's voting. Now, there's a big topic of issue of concern and in the news, constantly in the news. Um, and we want to talk about voter restoration, which is actually in our Connections resource guide as something that we are directed to work on as a sorority. So in the state of Florida, we've taken this very seriously, and I know many of my sorors have signed petitions, and at our AKA Day at the Capitol, we've circulated petitions, and I've actually taken hundreds of petitions from my sorors who have done their part and continue to do that work back home. And we got Amendment 4 passed, which changed 150 years of denying somebody a right to vote because of a felony conviction. So now people can vote, but the litigation has come through, and where we are now is Senate Bill 7066, which was challenged in court, that was appealed, and the 11th Circuit has said that 7066 is valid, and that now requires everybody, after they finish their jail time, their prison time, their probation, supervision, or parole, that they have to pay their fines and fees, restitution, and any financial obligation before they can vote. So what we are asking people to do is check their records. And you can check your records by going to the court where you were sentenced. There's a website link right there, and it gives you the courts, and you can click on that to actually get your records to see what the court has shown. Now, the litigation has proven that not all of the payments were kept in the court clerk's office, because sometimes people were directed to pay to probation. Sometimes people were directed to pay restitution directly to the person who was harmed or injured. So it doesn't have a full record, and that was part of the issue. But that you start there and try to get a record. People are receiving help from the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, FRRC. The president is Desmond Meade, is very charismatic, hardworking gentleman, has done amazing work getting Amendment 4 passed, and has created a fund where they are receiving donations from now around the nation. Certainly Floridians have been very generous, and you can contact them. And if you meet their criteria, which they have internal criteria, they are trying to pay as many of the fees and the costs as they can. And that website that people can go to is at floridarrc.com/fines-fees-assistance. And their website also has all of this information. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for people to get help. The League of Women Voters is also providing help. What we are doing is we have trained lawyers. We have a continuing legal education program where we have trained lawyers who can actually help people look at their records, and also they have the potential to go into court and modify the sentence so that a person can vote. That is a pathway provided by Senate Bill 7066 that we're using. And we learned just recently that the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition are only using lawyers to help them that have taken the league course, because they want their lawyers to be up to speed on the training. So if we have any lawyers in our sorority that want to do that kind of training, click on the league website and you'll see the free CLEs. They're given 2 hours of credit by the Florida Bar each one. So we are partnering with the FRC, and people can go directly to them, and they have that program.
Hey, Cecile, we just wanted to let everyone know that this is just not just a sorority event. This is for everybody that's in the general public. So we're going to be talking to everybody that's out in the universe and to the state and to everyone else. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. So yeah, thank you for that reminder. So the offer for everybody to participate is open to all citizens. We have people in the state of Florida lawyers and non-lawyers, and we have people outside of the state of Florida, lawyers and non-lawyers who are trying to assist with having returning citizens get the information so that they can have their voting rights back. And there's a big crunch right now, of course, because our deadline to register, as we discussed earlier, is October the 5th. So we welcome all.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Emanuela Junatian, and I work with the Urban League of Broward County. I'm also a member of the Young Professionals Network. And today I'll be talking a little bit about the census. So the census deadline is September 30th, so it's right around the corner. And it's very important to, when we're thinking about our civil rights and empowerment, to complete the census. So the census is required by the US Constitution, and it happens every 10 years. And essentially, it's a count of everyone who lives in the nation. So why do we want to fill out the census? So the census essentially provides a picture of our nation and our communities. It is an opportunity to shape the future for yourself, your family, and your government and your community. So when we're thinking about federal funding, for example, actually when we're thinking about the year that 2020 has been and all of the access to services, all of the areas and institutions that are directly surrounds us, that impact us when we're thinking about health, jobs, economic opportunity, education, they all require federal funding to keep going. And so the census guides how more than $675 billion in federal funding is distributed to states and communities each year. So when we're talking about Broward County, for example, we had a huge undercount in 2010, which meant that we lost $20 million in federal funding every single year because we didn't count members of our community. So like I said before, it creates jobs, it provides housing, it prepares for emergencies. We're in the middle of one huge emergency right now, but when we're thinking about hurricane season, for example, the census guides FEMA funding. When we're thinking about the resources that schools need, building our roads, having enough resources for our hospitals, these are all determined and guided by the census. And finally, when we're thinking about political representation, Florida, because of our growth, is expected to get 2 extra seats in Congress because of the census. So it's very important when it comes to political representation that we fill out the census. So a little bit more about the specific ways and examples that the census impacts our lives. Like I said before, healthcare programs, career and technical education grants, funding to historically Black colleges and universities, emergency services, preventative health services, financial aid, public transportation. Like this is not an exhaustive list of the many different things that the census impacts. So there is some concern about what is on the census, and I want to share with everyone that it is literally these short questions. And what we're saying is it takes 10 minutes to fill this out to determine 10 years of federal funding. So the census asks for your name, your phone number, your age and date of birth, sex, race, ethnicity, owner or renter, the number of people living in your home, and whether the person lives or stays somewhere else, as well as the relationship of that person to your home, to the homeowner. And finally, when we're thinking about the census, we have to know that the answers are confidential and sealed for 72 years. And it's protected from immigration and law enforcement. So when we're thinking about South Florida, Florida in general, and the huge immigrant population, through our conversations at the Urban League, we did talk to members who were afraid to fill out the census. And I understand that in this environment that we're in, we are concerned about our health and safety. But it's important to note that that you are protected from immigration and law enforcement, other government agencies as well. So, for example, if you're talking about the Department of Housing, for example, none of the information that you provide to the census affects applications for public assistance or housing or anything of that nature. And also right now we are in a season where we have census takers who are going door to door to the extent that they can and to the extent that they can do it safely to reach out to members of the community who haven't filled out their census yet. And so when we're talking about whether it's safe and secure, these enumerators have taken a lifetime oath to protect the personal information that you provide if that is the route that you seek to take to fill out the census. And finally, all of the data is encrypted to protect privacy. So there are 4 main ways to fill out the census. The easiest and the fastest is by going to www.my2020census.gov. Like I said, it takes about 10 short minutes to fill it out, and it really does impact the next 10 years of funding in your local community. You can also call a toll-free number. And when you call that number, you can also gain assistance, language assistance in 12 languages. So that includes English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. At this point, you've also received, if you haven't filled it out, you've also received a paper form in the mail, so you can do it that way and mail it back. And finally, we are in a season as we wrap up the census, and it's expected to end September 30th, pending a lawsuit right now to extend it to the original October 30th deadline. There are census takers who can come to your home and record the answers if you haven't filled out the census yet.
Okay, well, thank you for that wonderful information. The census is very important. Now we're going to move on to one of the reasons why we're here is the constitutional amendments. Thank you so much, Manuela and Brenda, for providing census information to us. And now we're going to move on to the constitutional amendments. Did you know that there were 6 on the ballot? 6 of them. And we're going to have Cecile explain all of these and what a yes and no vote would actually mean. Go ahead, Cecile.
Thank you. Let's begin with Amendment 1, and that's a citizenship requirement to vote in Florida elections. It replaces one word of the Florida Constitution. At current wording, it says every citizen shall be qualified to vote, and they want to change that to from every to an only a citizen. There's been a lot of studies about this, and the replacing of the one word has been determined that it really doesn't make a functional difference to change the word every to only a citizen. Right now, the only people that can vote are citizens. And so that change of the word is seemingly doesn't appear that it would have a direct impact. So a yes vote on Amendment 1 would change that wording from every to only a citizen. A no vote would leave it to say every citizen, which seems a little more welcoming. It's like everybody who's a citizen can vote. The supporters are Citizens Voters Incorporated, and opponents are the League of Women Voters of Florida. And so what people are saying is, let's leave the Constitution the way it is and not make these sort of technical changes that don't seem to have a lot of impact. Did you want to get questions about the amendments at the end of all of review of each one, or by?
Absolutely. At this point, we don't have any questions from our audience, I don't believe. Let me just check. No, we don't have any questions right now, so why don't we just continue? And if there's a question, I'm gonna jump right in, okay?
Okay, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thanks.
So then we have Amendment 2, which is raising Florida's minimum wage. And this is something that the amendment would allow the wage to be run over raised over time. And it would start next year, September 30, 2021, and it would raise our minimum wage, which is presently $8.56 to $10 an hour. And then the wage would increase on a schedule by $1 an hour every anniversary of September 30th until reaching $15 an hour by 2026. And later increases would then be attached to the annual rate of inflation. So this is an attempt to give people basically a living wage so that families don't have to work 2 and sometimes 3 jobs and have a negative impact on their health and their family life. So a yes vote, the benefits would be to allow minimum wage workers to be able to have basic necessities, including housing, childcare, transportation, the things that pretty much everybody needs. Its proponents also say that it would help to reduce race and gender income inequality because pretty much everybody would be, their wages would be raised according to the schedule, and it would take away, well, I like Tommy more than I like Sally, so I'm going to give Tommy more. Everybody's money would be raised together, and the same thing with racial differences. It's going to, proponents say, when you put more money in someone's pocket and they have more money to spend in stores, restaurants, and other services. So it's really going to help the economy. It will require small and large business owners to budget for increased payroll. A no vote will allow businesses to keep their wage costs at the current levels. And so this could impact some of the businesses that tend to use a minimum wage employees. Maybe cleaning, and Florida's got a lot of hotels that need to be cleaned, things of that nature, that kind of labor. So they're going to keep their costs at the same. If you increase potential labor costs, they say there may be a concurrent increase in prices of consumer goods. It's going to, people say that a no vote will allow the market for youth and teenagers in low-paying positions for them to get entry-level jobs, and it may be more difficult for them to get work in the labor market. And that if we raise the wages as requested by this amendment too, that they will continue to impact younger workers, women, and minorities in a negative way because there may be less jobs available for them. The supporters for Amendment 2 are Florida for a Fair Wage, which is the sponsor, Organize Florida, AFL-CIO, and the League of Women Voters of Florida. Opponents, the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association and the Florida Chamber of Commerce. They are essentially looking from the business point of view. That's Amendment 2. Amendment 3 is very involved amendment. It says all voters vote in primary elections for state legislators, governor, and cabinets. And in the state of Florida, we have closed primaries where when you indicate on your voter registration form which party you wish to belong to, then when it's time for that party to pick their candidate, then only members of that party can pick that candidate. So if I'm a Democrat, I have to vote on who is going to be the Democratic candidate. If I'm a Republican, I have to vote on who is going to be the Republican candidate for these offices. And if you are NPA or no party affiliation, independent, then if you don't have a candidate running in that with that party or that non-party, then you would not be able to vote in the primary system that we have today. And so this amendment would replace the closed primary partisan elections with a single primary in which all voters could vote, and we could all vote for anybody, regardless of our party affiliation and the party affiliation of the candidate. And all candidates would run on a single nonpartisan primary ballot. And the other part that's really, really important for people to understand is that the top 2 vote getters in the primary would then go on to the general election. So you could have 2 Democrats, you could have 2 Republicans, you could have 2 people who are not affiliated or other parties, whichever came out the top 2. And that's referred to as a jungle primary, because I guess you're out in the jungle and whoever gets through is the top 2 that go forward.
Goodness.
Go
Cecile,
ahead.
we have a
Yes.
question real quick.
Sure.
From our chat, we wanted to find out that, does this amendment 3 have any racial impact? Meaning that could certain parties or certain racial groups be discriminated against because of this this amendment?
Yes, there has been some studies done that we have reviewed extensively. One of the studies that was done was People Over Profits by Representative Shaw, past representative. He did a lot of studies that his studies showed that right now we have districts in the state of Florida that the way they were drawn, that there's a heavy balance of African-American voters in those districts. And so those African-American voters have like a high percentage, maybe like hypothetically 60%. So if there's 60% African Americans in that district, there's a very good opportunity for the African Americans to find somebody that looks like them, another African American, because their vote would be very powerful in that block. Now, what happens with the open primaries, according to the studies that Mr. Shaw has done, is then you would bring in people outside of the Democratic Party, and those could be non-Republicans, NPAs, and then many of them would be white people that would then be picking the top 2. And so whereas the black vote had been at 60% of the decision-making size, when you bring in all the other people, because there's no barriers, it's an open primary, the impact of the black vote might drop down to like 20%. 20% of the entire voting block, and therefore that would diminish the amount of power that the blacks would have to have a black person, because their percentage would drop. Go ahead.
So Cecile, so is this an amendment that is kind of like gerrymandering that would seek to disenfranchise certain political groups or certain racial minorities? Is that what this appears to be?
We don't really know if it was intended to do that. The concern, and the League of Women Voters has agreed, and the NAACP has come out against this. The concern is, regardless of what was intended, that would be the impact. And they've looked backwards, for example, at the governor's race with Mayor Gillum. And if he had faced this, he would not have been in the top 2. The other groups would have had more power and had a higher percentage than him. So that's an example of what could happen, because when you dilute the power of the Black vote, then it makes it more difficult for Black representatives to be voted in. So they're saying that if you vote yes, then the benefits, according to the proponents, registered voters not affiliated with a major political party can vote in any primary election. And then it could potentially lead to fewer minority candidates being elected and being represented. It would result in two candidates of possibly of the same political party running against each other in the general election. It could produce more competitive state races and attract more moderate candidates, is what some people say. And it would require third-party candidates to compete at the primary level to secure a spot on the general election. A no vote would continue the closed primary sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. A no vote would continue the current closed primary election process. Primarily, there would be two parties, is what we have in the state of Florida, although non-NPAs, non-party affiliation, is growing very quickly and may be as large as some of the parties soon. You would retain voters of current ability to elect candidates that more closely reflect racial makeup of their legislative districts, because we wouldn't dilute the Black vote. You would ensure nominated candidates conform more closely and consistently with positions held by the two political parties. And you would allow unqualified write-in candidates to trigger a closed primary simply by entering a race. So the concern that has been raised and has influenced a lot of decision makers is that this Amendment 3, if passed, would have a significant and adverse negative impact on African American voting power and for African Americans to have representatives. That has been one of the major concerns that was raised and has caused the League of Women Voters and the NAACP to oppose Amendment 3.
Are there any other parties that are against this amendment as well?
Yes, there's a long list. Let me go over it. Interestingly, the Republican Party is opposed to Amendment 3. The Democratic Party is opposed. The Green Party is opposed. The Florida State Conference of the NAACP, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, League of Women Voters of Florida, Organize Florida, AFL-CIO, People Over Profits, which is Sean's organization, Sean Shaw, the Florida Conservation Voters, and Florida People's Advocacy Center are all opposed. There's only one supporter, and that is the Florida Fair and Open Primaries, which has been funded largely by one person, a billionaire, who used to be a leader in the Bush administration. He is the main funder of this.
So it seems like just by the people that are supporting, well, the one group that's supporting and the people that are against no, it seems like if you put forward a candidate, they should be able to represent your party. And that's what a no vote actually means, correct?
Yes, a no vote means that the parties will be able to vet and select the candidates and put out the candidates that they think best represent the people's needs and the party's values.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that information. That's a really, really important
It really
is.
It really is. It could really set us back in terms of what African Americans have been able to gain in the state of Florida. And the part that people don't realize, it's the biggest part is because of the top two. There are open primaries that don't require top two. It's the combination of the top two and open primaries, because when you do it like this, what's one of the things that you can pull out and is just practical to understand is that oftentimes, for example, African Americans, we generally have, there's studies across the nation that we have 10% of the wealth of the average white family, just across the board. These are government studies that have well established this. So if you take averages and you say an African American wants to run statewide, and the average African American has 10% of wealth of the average white family, and the African Americans, kinfolk and neighbors and friends who may also be African American also have 10%, then that person is starting off with average 10% of what that white person may be starting off, just because of historic discrimination has led to systemic inequality in finances. And when I say that, educational segregation, redlining of houses, not getting loans for businesses, which were placed on African American families to hold them down for over 100 years. So the impact is present today. So that was one of the ways that that the league analyzed it, and others have analyzed it, is to say, well, let's just look at the finances that we know are in place because of systemic racism. And if you just use that as an example, that could have a negative impact, because getting a statewide a face and brand requires a lot of resources to travel, go about, and advertise. So that's one example where Amendment 3 could have a negative impact.
Okay, so let's move on to Amendment number 4 now.
Okay. Amendment 4 is another one.
Just one more
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
These amendments are statewide amendments, just not Broward County or Bay County, but actually they affect the entire state, correct?
Yes. And the other thing that we want to keep in mind is these amendments are very, very hard to get on the ballot, and they're very hard to take off. So we got to be very, very careful when you change the foundational legal document of a community, either the federal government, if the foundational constitution is changed, or our state government. It's really hard to take it out. Very, very, very difficult.
So that's what Amendment 4 kind of
yes, it does. It really does.
So let's talk about that one.
Yeah, Amendment 4 actually makes it doubly difficult to change, get a constitutional amendment. It's called voter approval of constitutional amendments, and it requires that all proposed amendments to the Florida Constitution to be voted on, approved by 60% of voters in 2 consecutive general elections in order to pass. Right now, we just vote on things up or down in one election. We don't say, okay, we voted yes in 2020, and that's just half of the battle. We have to get all the petitions, the information out, and advertise and campaign again in 2022. So you would basically double the work of trying to get an amendment. Now we need to think about this a lot, because the prior amendment where we got the restoration of voting rights back, that was done by citizen initiative, which is one of the ways the citizens said, we want you to make a change to our Constitution. And that would have made it very difficult for the restoration of voting rights to get passed, because it would have required, in that instance, for you to vote twice in 2 different consecutive general elections. On that one, which was really hard to get passed, we only voted once. And so those who say no to Amendment 4 say it's hard enough to get amendments passed, especially when the citizens say, we want this done. So a no vote would keep it less restrictive and allow amendments to be brought forth, not just from citizens, but the legislator also would be, this would be impacted. We had the Constitutional Amendment Commission, which was last year, and that's when people go around the state and take testimony. These are people appointed by the governor and representatives and state legislators, and they go around and they take a testimony about how the Constitution could be changed. And so that would be more difficult for that to get done too.
So Cecile, Let
Yes.
me ask you this. Who is for the yes vote and who is for the no vote? Because I'm
Okay.
a little confused of why we would have to, we as citizens vote for something and we expect it, it's passed, yay, it's passed, and then all of a sudden we have to go back and redo the same thing. Is someone trying to get us to change our vote? Is that what this is?
I think what they're trying to do is make it more difficult for citizens in particular, because citizens initiatives usually require a lot of grassroots support, and to get the word out requires finances to support, to let the citizens know what are the issues. So right there's like a barrier for citizens. It's very difficult for citizens initiatives to get going and be strong enough, and this would directly impact citizens more. The legislators, the constitutional commission, they have access to publicity, the TV, they are official governmental entities. There's also a taxation commission. They have access to governmental entities. So they have ways to get what they want out to the people. The citizens themselves, we don't have money sitting, waiting to move petitions and amendments forward. That's just something that people donate to out of their goodness of their heart, their passion. So the opponents of this, of amendment, this a new amendment 4. Now, remember, this is not the old amendment 4, which was for restoration of rights. That passed. This is a different amendment 4, and we need to make sure people know that this amendment 4 is going to make it more difficult for things like the earlier amendment 4 to pass. So the opponents are the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, which is a voting rights group, AFL-CIO, the ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, Desmond Meade's Voter Rights Restoration Coalition, Service Employees International Union, Organized Florida, New Florida Majority, Florida Immigrant Coalition, and the Florida Civic Engagement Table. The supporters are Keep Our Constitution Clean, which is a sponsor. The sponsor says that this voting yes will likely lead to a marked reduction in the number of future amendments added to the Constitution. It will delay enactment of voter-approved changes to the Florida Constitution. It will add considerable time and money needed by citizen groups to successfully pass voter-driven initiatives, provide well-funded corporate interests a second chance to defeat publicly popular amendments that initially passed. Now, let me correct myself. This is not what the proponents are saying. This is what the analysis is saying. They will significantly limit voters' ability to amend their constitution and to act as a check on the legislators when it fails to pass laws that are important to citizens.
Oh,
So
let me ask you
yeah,
this. So when the lobby to legalize medical marijuana, if a vote like this would have made it a little bit harder, is that correct?
yes, it would have made it twice as hard because you would have had to go to the citizens and ask them to vote on it twice.
Okay, all right. So, all right, so let's move on to, let me see if there's any questions. Let's move on to the second, excuse me, the Fifth Amendment now.
Okay. Amendment 5 is a limitation on homestead exemption. The originator is by the Florida legislators. They can also bring forth constitutional amendments. The summary is that it will increase from 2 to 3 years the period of time a homeowner has to transfer the increased value of their home if they make a sale. It's called Save Our Home Benefits, from a prior home to a new home. The difference between a home's adjusted value and the appraised value is the Save Our Home benefit. So it's like, what is it really worth versus what the property appraiser has evaluated. Usually they evaluate a home at less than its market value. And that value would be what you would be able to save for not just 2 years, 3 years. So currently, if a person moves to a new home, they have 2 years to transfer this benefit to their new home. So a yes vote will help homeowners who sell their home late in the year by allowing them more time to transfer their benefit. It will reduce property tax revenue available for funding things like local schools and other services like police, fire, and infrastructure. It will limit the ability of local governments to control their budgets. It will add tax law to the Florida Constitution. Again, anything you put in the Constitution is difficult to get out. A no vote will maintain the current Save Our Home exemption to a 2-year window, which begins January 1 of every year. So it will lessen the time that people who sell their homes late in the year would have. It would not impact current level of property tax available for school districts and other services in the community. It would leave tax law out of the Constitution so that if things change across the state, then we'd have something stuck in the Constitution that would be more difficult to modify. So, for example, if we were to continue to have a lot of storms, or the storms were to increase and there were a lot more damage to the houses, then how you handle taxes, what people who are saying no to this are saying that's something that should be looked at every year, how you handle taxes, and look at the circumstances involved every year to make a decision. And placing tax standards and laws in the Constitution takes away that flexibility that we vote our legislators and representatives to have. So that's one of the reasons why people are recommending a no on Amendment 5.
So
And yes,
who is for Amendment 5 and who is against Amendment 5?
the supporters are the Florida legislators themselves. This is something that came from them. And the opponents are the League of Women Voters of Florida. I believe I saw that the NAACP does support this also. The League's concern, again, is the impact on schools and governmental services, and placing something like this in the Constitution when it may be more difficult to be flexible if the state's needs change.
Okay. So let's move on to Amendment 6.
Okay. Amendment 6. Amendment 6 is called the ad valorem tax discount for spouses of certain deceased veterans who had permanent combat-related disabilities. And it allows the homestead property tax discount to carry over to the surviving spouse of a deceased veteran who had had permanent combat-related disabilities. And it would take effect in our coming year, January 1, 2021, and will remain in effect until the surviving spouse remarries or sells or disposes of the property, except for a few exceptions. So a yes vote on Amendment 6 would give a benefit that the deceased veteran had during his or her life, and it would give it to the surviving spouse. It would reduce property tax, again, available for local things such as schools, fire, roads, and things that are paid out of local taxes. It would embed an exemption in the Florida Constitution, and if anybody wanted to change it down the road, it is just difficult to change the Constitution. So those are some of the concerns.
Okay, so Seal.
Yes.
All right. We're lawyers.
Yes.
And this sounds like math. Okay.
Right.
I need you to explain this to me like
Okay.
I have no idea, like I'm a third grader or something, because this is going way over my head.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's got to be some people out there that feel like me, like this is like math or something, right?
Right. I get that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's go back to basic concepts that most of us are familiar with. We understand that when people go to war and take on that obligation to be a military active duty person, unfortunately, sometimes they're hurt or killed in the line of duty. And so it's saying that a veteran, in our taxes, we have that veterans get certain uh, discounts on their taxes because of that sacrifice. All right. So that benefit is a property tax discount
Okay.
that they get, whatever it is. It's a discount that they get because of their status as a veteran with a permanent combat related disability. Okay. So they have that. And I think that's everybody understands that. All this is doing is it's saying, okay, veteran, we give it to you because you have usually physical permanent disability, and sometimes it's mental because you can have post-traumatic stress syndrome also. You have a definable injury because of your service to our nation and to the state. We're going to acknowledge that by giving you a discount.
Okay.
All this does is say, service member, if you die, we're going to continue that discount to your spouse, whatever it was. That's all this is saying. It's
Oh,
saying,
okay.
yeah, the spouse, the surviving spouse of the person who was injured. Again, the definition is a veteran with a permanent combat-related disability, and that's defined. And that's something that usually probably you have a VA rating that would correlate to the state recognizing that. So this has been determined that you have it, and you have it for your lifespan, but you're married to another person, and that other person that you're married to survives you. Maybe you die in a car accident, maybe you die as a result of, long-term impact of their disability, whatever, you die, and your spouse is surviving. And this is saying we want that surviving spouse who was married to that veteran with the permanent combat related disability to receive that same discount as if that veteran were still alive. Does that make more sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. You cleared that one up. Now,
Okay.
we have a question from the chat, I think from the Facebook chat, that wants us to go back to Amendment 5. And
Okay.
Amendment 5 has to deal with, the homestead exemption. They want to know if this is going to affect school funding. As you know, there are schools in rich neighborhoods and there are schools in poor neighborhoods. And so is this going to affect the school funding at all?
Yes, it is. And that's one of the reasons the league came out against Amendment 5, because we're very concerned about education and educational equity. And that is a big issue because schools are funded by local taxes. So this would diminish the resources available for the public schools. Amendment 5 would limit the tax revenue because it would allow the safe haven of protecting the value of your home. It would give them another year to do that. And versus you only have the protection for 2 years and then you have to start paying taxes at a higher level.
Okay, so bottom line is that Amendment 5 would cut the funding to the schools.
Yes.
That appears that
Yes.
way.
Yes. And unfortunately, Amendment 6 that we were just talking about would have the same impact. Because
Really?
yes, because the surviving spouse would be paying less taxes. See, right now, if a veteran dies, the disability discount dies with them. That's the way it is now. It's only for them during their life. So right now, after they die, the spouses pay the normal taxes like everybody else. And those normal taxes pay into school funding, road upkeep, hospitals, local things, fire protection. You see? So when you extend that discount into the life of the surviving spouse until she remarries, or I say she, he or she remarries, or they sell the home, that means you are limiting the value of the property that will be taxed. And when you do that, there's less taxes. And
Okay,
there's less taxes that goes in the pot, there's less taxes that comes out to pay for schools.
okay, so now I have 3 questions for you from the chat for you. The first question is, are there viable options other than placing these amendments into our Constitution?
Absolutely. These, both of these amendments, Amendment 5 and Amendment 6, were brought out by the Florida legislators, which is interesting because that's their job, to pass laws every year. So it's kind of, why did you do that? You know, but once you put something into the Constitution, it's very difficult to come out. So perhaps that was one of the reasons. Once, if they were able to get it in, then it, you know, it's like pulling teeth literally to get it out. But yes, the legislators themselves had the ability and to bring forth a law, propose a law, and have it be debated and voted on, and have the citizens comment and everything.
The second question is, who exactly is against Amendment 6 and who's for it?
Amendment 6.
Said it, but I'm not sure.
Yes, no, I didn't get to it. Thank you for
I'm
asking.
sorry.
It's very similar to Amendment 5. The Florida legislators are the sponsor, and they're the only group that's actively advocating for it. And the only group that's actively advocating against it is the League of Women Voters of Florida, and for the reasons of the impact on the local government, their ability to fund schools and hospitals and things that local people need. The other concern is embedding constitutional, embedding tax issues and tax matters in the Constitution, which makes it difficult to change. And the whole purpose of having the legislators go to Tallahassee annually is so they can look around and see, hey, this is going on in the state. We need to take this or that action to combat or to address the needs of the state. And to place it in the Constitution embeds it in a way that takes that flexibility away.
Well, goodness. The third question is that actually there are 2 questions, same topic. With all of the measures that are on the ballot at this point, the constitutional amendments, how long do you think it's going to take someone to fill out their ballot? 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 hours?
This is a great question, and it varies dramatically depending on where you live, because there are other matters that are local that are placed on the ballot. So I've been told that in some counties, the ballot is 11 pages. Now that's going to take some time. And in other counties, it could be 2
11
pages.
pages?
Yes, that's what I've heard. So what we advise people to do is to attend forums like this. It's absolutely very, very important for people to attend forums, you know, given by different groups, different organizations. Go on websites, do your research. I have a paper copy of the League of Women Voters Guide, which we can make available if anybody needs that. Let the organizers know that we could send them to a chapter, and the chapter could then distribute them, or anybody else, not just the chapters, but if people need voters guides, let us know. I know the NAACP has put out something very recently of their stance on the amendments. And so there's different sources that people can go to. and to do their research. So the other thing that we recommend that people do is please go to your supervisor of elections website. Most of them actually have an example of what the ballot is going to look like. So don't wait till election day to go and, wow, this is more than I thought. Go ahead and look at it early and start asking questions. Ask, people that you hold, that they hold their opinion high. Do your own research. You'll hear you'll hear discussions on the radio and television. You'll hear articles, and there may be some Zoom forums where people can debate the pros and cons of different, not just these amendments, which are very, very important to the entire state, but the local matters that have been placed on your ballot, depending on where you live.
This is excellent information. Excellent information. I know that you answered this, but I think that the answer is, let me just ask one more time. Who supports Amendment 6 and who's against Amendment 6?
Well, I'm going to consult my paper voters guide because
Okay.
yes, Amendment 6 is the extension of the tax benefit, a discount that was given to veterans who had permanent combat-related disabilities. It extends it past the life of the veteran to the spouse. And the persons that have advocated for this and have supported this is the entity that put it on the ballot. And that is the Florida legislators themselves. The people who have the ability to make the laws are the ones who said, I want this in the Constitution. And the entity that is saying this is not a good idea is the League of Women Voters.
Okay, so besides that, that's no one else has come out for or against. It's the League against the legislators, correct?
I'm not sure about that. I can check my phone. I think the NAACP issued its statement of the Florida board issued a statement, and I'm not sure how they've come on Amendment 5 and 6. I believe on the other amendments, they're in alignment with the league, but I am not sure what they did with Amendment 5 and 6.
Okay. Now there's a question that's in the Zoom chat, and I think this is coming from Melody, and she's saying, so the amendments under discussion will be on the primary ballot. Well, we've already had the primary, correct? So
Yes.
this is going to be on the general election ballot.
Right. The very next one, people refer to it as the general election. It's also referred to as the presidential election because we will be picking a president at the same time. But this is an example of how important it is for everyone to vote the entire ballot. There are so many things that impact us that are not just the president or who is the governor, which we're not doing governor right now, but whatever is at the top of the ticket usually gets people's attention. But the things that really impact you on a day-by-day basis are the things further down on the ballot.
Local elections, right?
Yeah.
Local elections matter.
Local elections.
matter.
Who is your commissioner? Who is running for, the water management district, because that's your water quality. And we all drink water, I mean, there's just the things that touch you the closest are lower down on the ballot, because those are the local people that impact. If you need to go to the hospital, is there funding for indigent care, or does the hospital have this kind of equipment, or do you have to drive an hour and a half to a big city to get treatment? So there's a lot of things that impact us daily are down ballot issues.
So just as a recap, because we're getting ready to close.
Okay.
Let's go over the amendments really quick one more time, but without a lot of discussion, just the amendments, like what is Amendment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
Okay. Amendment 1 is the one that they want to change one word from every citizen can vote to only with only a citizen can vote. And people just don't see a big purpose for that, and it's disturbing the Constitution. The supporters are the Citizen Voters Incorporated, who proposed it, and the opponents are the League of Women Voters.
Okay, and Amendment 2.
Amendment 2 is the one about raising Florida's minimum wage on a incremental basis, so not right away, but in over time, the wages would be raised to $15 an hour. Proponents say that will be a living wage. People can do more with their families and be home with them and not have to work 2 and 3 hours through 2 and 3 jobs. People who say it will be harmful will say that's going to take the low wage jobs away and there'll be less work. The supporters are Florida for a Fair Wage as a sponsor, Organize Florida, AFL-CIO, and the League of Women Voters of Florida. Opponents, the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Amendment 3.
Amendment, yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big one.
Right. This is the one that combines open primary with a top 2. The top 2 go forward. So it's 2 things happening at one time. And I think a lot of people, they're just thinking of it's open primary, but that top 2, only the top 2 go forward, really is the 2 to combine together is that what a lot of people are concerned will have an extremely negative impact on African American representation.
And almost every group is against this one, correct?
Yes. Republican Party, Democratic Party, Green Party, Florida State Conference of the NAACP, Florida Chamber of Commerce is on our side this time, League of Women Voters of Florida, Organize Florida, AFL-CIO, People Over Profits, Florida Conservation Voters, Florida People's Advocacy Center. So, and the only ones for it are the proponents and the ones who brought it out, All Voters Vote, and Florida Fair and Open Primary. So 2 groups.
Amendment 4.
Okay. Amendment 4 is not the old Amendment 4 that restored rights. This is a new Amendment 4, and please make sure people know. This has nothing to do with restoration of voting rights. This is about, it's making it more difficult for amendments to be passed. It's saying that people have to vote, essentially do the same voting 2 elections in a row. So it just broadens the time it takes to get something passed and doubles the effort and money required and doubles the amount of time. So they feel like this is going to have a very strong impact on citizen initiatives because those are always hard to come by because citizens as a group have limited resources versus sometimes big corporations and big companies or big business, they have more resources and they would be able to have a 2 times around to get something done. Whereas citizens would falter if they even got the first time. The energy and finances to get it the second time would mean that they would have a very negative impact on citizens' initiatives. And that is one of the concerns. Supporters of that are Keep Our Constitution Clean, the sponsor, just 1. Opponents are extensive. League of Women Voters of Florida, Common Cause, AFL-CIO, ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, Service Employees International Union, Organize Florida, New Florida Majority, Florida Immigrant Coalition, and the Florida Civic Engagement Table.
And we just went over Amendment 5 and Amendment 6 at length.
Yes.
So one of the questions, the last question that we got was, is any of this information on the amendments available to the Haitian community and the Caribbean community?
I can say that to answer the first question, the Haitian community, it is my understanding that the league is undertaking to have it translated into Creole. I'm not sure the timing on that, but that has been discussed. We do have a Spanish version, which many Caribbean people have Hispanic background. So the Spanish version is available and will be mailed out shortly. Again, I would encourage anybody who would like any of these paper, they can go online to get it, but if, on the League of Women Voters website and the other organizations that are doing opinions on these, I know the NAACP has one, but if for the league's version, and we consider ourselves nonpartisan and very research oriented, but
Yes.
you can send an email and we will definitely try to send some to you and your community and ask for you to give them out, because we know a lot of people like to hold it and read it.
Okay, so at this time, we're gonna thank you so much for educating us on all of these amendments. If anybody has any questions, they can contact their supervisor of elections. They can also look on the League of Women Voters webpage, correct?
Yes.
And of
Well,
course,
just to clarify, it's the Florida League of Women Voters, because
the
there's a
Florida.
national one and people may be confused, but most states have their state league, and we're the Florida League of Women Voters.
Okay, and because this is being streamed on Facebook Live, we'll also have a copy of this, well, this recording of this whole presentation on YouTube as well. So at this time, we'd like to thank you so much, Cecile. We'd also like to thank Emanuela and Brenda and of the young professionals. And also, we'd like to just let you see our shining faces. This is our Connect and Elect team. We've been putting forward all of the Connect and Elect events for you, the background. So thank you so much for being with us. And if there's any other questions, just shoot us an email. We'll answer, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Is that it?